All right. Welcome, everybody. Another Lifecycle Insights Friday workshop. It is not 311. You can tell we spared no expense on our spell checking budget this week, or our presentation budget this week. But as usual, we'll go through our quick housekeeping items first, and then we'll turn things over to kind of our special guest this week. So housekeeping items. If you're new to Lifecycle Insights, don't forget we do new to Lifecycle Insights every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern. It's a repetitive series of about 4 classes where we teach you how to do your data cleanup, how to set yourself up for success in the platform, and really how to get those reports out the door and go meet with your first customer. So definitely, if you haven't already seen that, swing by and check it out, or you can catch that in recording format if you open up Lifecycle Insights and click on Help and search for the word Welcome. Where can you find us? We're going to be doing some travel in here. I will be at Channel Partners in Vegas on April 11th through 14th. And if you're with James Kernan's Mastermind Consulting Group, we'll also be at their event in Orlando, Florida next week. So lots of cool stuff coming up. Marnie's going to be doing a webinar with Clip Training. That one should be pretty exciting too. March 24th, 1 p.m. Eastern. So those links should be in the chat for you guys if you want to check them out, sign up, register, check out any of those cool things. In case you missed it, yesterday was St. Patty's Day, the best holiday of the entire year. And I met with Josh Whitman from Symbian Cloud. We got to hang out and talk about some things that kind of prep you for these cybersecurity questionnaires. We talked about some things that their platform does that a lot of other platforms don't. They're kind of filling a void in the space that just my argument to them was you're not really saving MSPs anytime because they're not doing any of this crap anyway. So they're competing against a really interesting status quo where a lot of Microsoft 365 goes unconfigured and is ultimately insecure. There's a lot of cool stuff that they do to kind of complement that. So if you want to give that webinar a checking out, it is in the chat as well. You can go pick that one up by recording and listen to it. You don't need to register for the recording. You can just hop out there and listen. And buyer beware, there was a 9% beer involved. So the second half of that webinar, we're not taking any accountability for. And now for today's special guests, because we're going to waste no time. I think you guys are going to want to have a lot of interaction and a lot of conversation around this topic. So unmute your mics, turn on your cameras, have some real conversations with these guys, as it was just expressed to be by the Kelvin Teglar. I can never say his last name. I screw it up every time I say it. We have the smartest man in insurance, accompanied by Dustin Bolander. So those are Kelvin's words, not mine. But if you guys don't know Dustin, he is an MSP owner for how many years? Quite a while now.
Going on 10 years, 8 years now. This is my second MSP.
On that side of the business, and now he's working on the vendor side of the business as well. This guy has not sold his MSP. He's straddling both sides of the fence, but he's working with Reid to launch or to get Fifthwall Solutions into the MSP space. And you guys are doing some interesting stuff. I'm enjoying the conversations. I think everybody's aware of these cybersecurity questionnaires and all the stuff that's coming in the space. So with that, I'll shut up. I'll let you guys kind of take control here. I'm going to stop my screen share. Let me know if you have permission to screen share or if I have to click some buttons over here.
All right, let me see.
And you guys can take it.
I think I do.
Cool.
Yeah. So like Alex said, my name is Dustin Bolander. I am still an MSP owner, and I'm also spending about 2 days a week at Fifthwall now. And Fifthwall is a wholesaler. The best analogy that I found on that is think distributor, right? So we have access to 35 plus cyber insurers, and we also connect with all the agencies. And then also now we're working with MSPs to help you guys get coverage for your clients as well. One of the things that Reid was genius about was he realized at one point, you know what, with the insurance agents, they're having to bring the MSP, the IT guys in every time. That's the real channel of authority. That's the real brains behind everything. The insurance agents don't really understand the cybersecurity part of it. And so that was where it was actually Jeremy Young gets credit if he's around. Jeremy Young connected Reid and I at the beginning of last year, and Reid has sucked me in on the cyber insurance side. So Reid, do you want to introduce yourself? Actually, sorry.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dustin. So I guess for lack of a better term, I'm a big insurance nerd, and I decided to get into cyber insurance specifically about 7 years ago. So, yeah, Fifthwall, our firm is solely dedicated on cyber insurance, and it was a early start, probably too early, and now I think, like most of us, it's everywhere. So we're feeling really good about our approach and kind of what we're trying to do as far as differentiating ourselves and partnering with, I guess, a new level of partnership that's not really done on the insurance side. So this is typically where I have brought Dustin in, whether he was wanting to or not, kind of kicking and screaming. But I said, I need an MSP Sherpa because I don't speak the language. This is foreign territory. I need a guide. So Dustin has been kind enough to be my guide. So I'm going to let him run with a lot of this, but I will be in the background as the insurance nerd, just watching him so he doesn't screw up.
Well, don't worry, as a nerd, you're in good company here, so you'll be just fine.
So what I want to do is we have an MSP program. If you go to the website, fifthwallsolutions.com/MSP. And the first step that we do on that is what we call our Cyber 101 Academy. And that's what I was going to run through today, is just kind of a stripped down version of that. And there's two parts of it, is sort of the how can you engage with your clients? How can you leverage cyber insurance to really get them to do the security you need them to? And then the second part of it being is how does cyber insurance actually work? That being said, though, Alex used the word interactive every other sentence that we spoke. So what I want you guys to do is just interrupt. We're going to jump around. We're going to discuss certain details, that kind of thing. And if it is quiet for a minute, the presentation will kind of keep us moving forward. So before we start, super important slide here. You guys can see my screen, right? Cool. Yeah. You are not licensed insurance agents. The only person on this call that I know of is Reid. So there are certain things that you can and cannot speak about. The general rule that I use, being somebody that straddles both sides of the fence, is as soon as you start talking about a specific product, you need to stop. And whenever I say that, I mean, I can talk about cyber insurance, I can talk about coverages, I can talk about claims. I cannot talk about Tokyo Marine's cyber insurance product. So that's just a good, easy black and white line on there to help you not get in trouble. That being said, if you do get to the point you need to talk about a product, that's where Reid Wilson and that whole team comes into play, and they're a huge help. Okay, so the first part is the VCIO discussion points. These are the things that we're typically seeing come up again and again, and the tools to, you kind of have 2-3 objectives on it, right? The client's saying, do I need cyber insurance? What does it do? And then you have the ones that are kind of digging in their heels a little bit. So these are a couple of the things that we found that work really well, or that naturally come up as well. And then also we're going to talk about the core controls, which will help make you look like the expert whenever you're speaking to them and be preparing for what's coming in the next 12 months. So the first one, again, I said I'm going to go kind of quick on this. We can dig in more if you guys want to, just bring it up. CSF framework is awesome, right? So on the far right side, we have respond and recover. That's where cyber insurance comes in, right? Hopefully we stop everything. You're not going to stop 100% of it these days, but whenever it does come time to respond, recover the environment, all the other damages, that's where cyber insurance is important. So whenever the client's going, well, why do I even need this? Is look, you're going to get hit at some point, and this is going to help you make you whole, not just on the tech side, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but all the other stuff, business interruption, legal, forensics, all that fun stuff. So if you're using the NIST CSF to discuss with clients at all, it's that respond and recover. That's where cyber insurance is a big bullet point. Another thing, why do I need cyber insurance? I'm already paying you, you're my MSP. Again, going back to assume breach, it's a question of when, not if. Nobody's stopping the most elite attacks. The Russians are coming after you. They're probably going to get in. But what we can do, Mr. Customer, is we can deploy MFA. We can have offsite backups. All this stuff insurance wants us to do. And we can raise the bar and then also reduce the blast damage whenever that happens. Cyber insurance, again, is doing that respond and recover, right? So we're getting the business back online. We're dealing with all the damages, things like that. That's the part that, me as your MSP, I can't do that for you. I can't do the forensics. I can't do the legal. I can't do all the credit monitoring you might need, the PR, stuff like that. Technical ends up being only a portion of the cost that you have whenever these events happen. That being said, also too, is we can send this deck out to you guys if you want it at all. This slide is killer for doing your CIO meetings. So talking about it, okay, why do we need, again, you know what? Let's take technical off the table. Let's pretend I'm a great MSP. I can cover the technical part. First thing every insurance company does, engages the lawyers. Okay, now we have, the confidentiality of it. They're figuring out what are your obligations. Every state has, even I'm in Texas, even here in Texas, we have notification laws now. What are we liable for? What do we need to tell our customers? How do we phrase it? All that good stuff. The forensics part on this slide is not actually talking about, usually we think technical forensics. Where did they get in? What did they get access to? That kind of thing. This is on good, really easy example is business email compromise that somebody gets into a user's mailbox. Okay, great. Well, I do a lot of law firms at my MSP, so I'm going to talk about that, right? Okay, it's a secretary at the law firm. Oh, great. Well, she had access to these 3 other lawyers. So now we got to go through and do e-discovery. What's actually in there? Oh, here's this, document that they received 7 years ago. That's confidential information. We need to notify on that. That's what these forensics are referring to. It's all this stuff of digging through from a legal perspective, doing like the e-discovery aspect of it, of what are we actually liable for? What was accessed and what is that data? What's the importance of that data? What are our obligations? And then that flows into all the stuff on the right-hand side. Notifications, we have to send these notices out. What regulatory groups, stuff like that. Public relations, if it's bad enough. I don't know if you guys saw the StorageCraft rumors floating around that their cyber insurance is probably paying for a lot of PR right now.
I can't imagine. If you guys haven't seen it, StorageCraft has a message out that they've lost some folks' data in their storage platform. So I always used to say the fastest way to get fired as an MSP is to lose somebody's data. I can't imagine as a data backup provider that there's a faster way to get fired.
Yeah, it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
Credit monitoring, fraud response, that kind of stuff. Think if you have medical clients, for example, right? Is all the medical records in there? Anybody that's dealing with finances, account numbers, stuff like that. Whenever you get those credit monitoring notices in the mail, that's probably cyber insurance that paid for that. So this is really the big thing, right? You're the risk advisor for your clients. So it's, hey, I understand, I know the IT part, I can help recover on that. But there's other parts of it whenever these breaches happen that you need to be protected from. So this is a substantial cost on the cyber insurance side. The law firms, e-discovery, all that stuff is, not very cheap. I don't know, Reid, do you want to speak a little more on that's on the claim side of things?
Yeah, I think the one thing is that with these claims, they happen, they're each individual, they happen in different ways, but this is kind of the one consistent path. So when a policy comes into actually doing its job, most carriers follow this model. And actually, I say most, almost all. And so the costs are just kind of flowing to their process. That's good and bad. But if you're going to get coverage, you got to flow through that process, and there has to be coverage for those third-party services. So I will say, I think some of the trees are being shaken a little bit. We may be doing some of that as well soon, hopefully, so we can redefine some of this, the IR. But I think you hit all the points, Dustin. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll go. Reid mentioned the coverages. We'll go into that here in a minute.
I want to ask a question here on this slide, though, because maybe nobody else is wanting to speak up, but I want to ask a question here because as the MSP, if I know my customer's been breached, there's a point at which they need to engage their insurance company, their legal counsel, their whatever. If we haven't actually sat down with our customer and had this conversation about what does your insurance cover, are you appropriately covered, and who is the vendor, and what does response look like? We don't even know who to call when we identify that there's a breach. And I think most MSPs are in that boat where we don't know who our insurance company's point of contact is. We don't know what their process is. We know what ours is, but we don't know what each of our clients is. And this is a conversation we need to have early, which is in the event that we identify a breach and we reach out to you, do you know who to call at your insurance company? Are your client may very well go, I need legal counsel. I got to go call my attorney. Well, as we explore this, we figure out that that's really wrong. You need to call your insurance company so they can get their attorneys involved who are going to protect your client. There's so many opportunities for misstep in here if we haven't started to spell this out. Can you give some guidance on what you're seeing success in just in getting customers to kind of open up and talk about this? Because that's a tough point, but I think this is one way to kind of break down that barrier and let this slide explains for them that I need to call your legal counsel, or you need to call your legal counsel who will be assigned by your insurance provider in the event that a breach happens.
Yeah. So one thing that I've always done on the MSP side is I ask them, new customer, we sit down and do our first QBR is, okay, we're going to put together an incident response plan, even if it's super lightweight, just kind of a starter plan. But as part of that, let's get a copy of your policy. And then we're going to pull out the incident response number. There's normally a hotline or an email address or something, your policy number, the contact info for your company on there, whose name is on the policy, what's the address and stuff so they can find you. And then I'm going to store that on my MSP because what happens if the network gets ransomed, right? Oh, cool. We got this IR plan, but it's not where anybody can get to it.
Right.
That at least gets you as the MSP enough of a starting point to be able to open that claim, get that, incident response team running. And then that also opens the conversation at that point. They go, oh, Alex, we don't have cyber insurance. What are you talking about? Or, if you want to look, make sure, do they have the right coverage? If you're using that to encourage, additional security controls. So it's like, oh, cool, this expires in 9 months. I'm going to make a note to follow up with you in 7 months so we can review the application and make sure that, you have everything in place. If there's not more we can do to improve your security and insurance's eyes.
I like it. The other thing you guys should have attached to all of your incident response policies is your local FBI field office, because they have a lot of resources for this kind of stuff that most people don't know to ask for. So there's the website to go find those if you guys don't have it already. It wouldn't hurt to already have those phone numbers on speed dial.
Any questions so far?
Don't be shy, guys. This is your chance with the smart guy and Dustin.
Dustin's doing great.
I have a quick question. So on the slide deck here, it's breach occurs, immediately contact legal counsel. That's your insurance company's legal counsel, correct?
Right. So you're going to go through their claims line.
So wouldn't it be breach occurs, contact the insurance company immediately?
Yeah. So this is more of a flow. I'm sorry. So this isn't what you should do. This is kind of whenever the breach occurs, this is the non-technical flow on the insurance side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll normally have almost like a dispatcher on the claim side. So they'll engage, they'll review your thing. They're going to say, we'll, get with you in the next 8 hours. And then at that point, the person from insurance will jump on, the legal counsel, the IR people, whatever resources they need to engage.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. It's their version of quarterbacking. But it's pretty much the same every time. But I say that with an asterisk because you never want to assume, and that's why it's always good to ensure that you're documenting, especially which carrier it's with, because not all carriers are created equal when it comes to their process. So there's plenty of scenarios out there where third-party services have already been utilized, whether it's a personal lawyer or XYZ has already been done, and none of that is covered because the insurer wants their approved vendors to be utilized. And they want to be the ones to quarterback.
So then do we, as an MSP, contact our insurance company as well, right?
It's a really good point. So from and I say errors and omissions. So for MSPs, for you guys, you have your own unique policy. Hopefully, it's a version of cyber, but it's a little bit different. It's protecting you.
We've got cyber insurance and E&O.
Yep, you have what's called tech E&O. Okay, so putting your carrier on notice is not a bad thing. I want to break through and demystify that. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because if they can be put on notice, time is money. And you're not going to be penalized for that to a degree. Like if you have a client that has a claim and there's the potential it can affect your E&O, that's a potential event, right? Whether or not we have a direct correlation or not, it's a potential event. Good question.
Cool. Moving forward.
All right. I'm betting everybody in here is pretty good and doesn't run into this very much, but that is something that comes up. We get a lot of questions on whenever we're doing these trainings of, I can't get my client to do MFA. So a couple pieces that you can use the insurance side specifically. It's not a discussion. It's, hey, we're going to be turning MFA on in the next 3 weeks. Here's all the, well, I don't want, sorry, Mr. Farling, your cyber insurance requires you to have MFA on. As I said, we're doing it. It's a great, use insurance as like kind of that stick to get the client to do it. It's like, sorry, man, I hate MFA too, but you know what? Reed and these guys are making you do it. Otherwise, they're not going to pay out your claims. Like we just gotta make that happen. So that's been one of the biggest benefits on the MSP side has been, it's a lot more, I wish me as the MSP was always the authority and they would just take my word and listen on everything. Insurance is big and scary, and it's a lot different whenever insurance is saying it instead of Dustin or Alex or whoever the MSP is. There's a big sense of authority. So leverage that to get them to do what you need them to do.
If you don't force them to do that, can it come back on you? I mean, since the insurance company is requiring it and stuff like that, I mean, you know what I mean?
Well, it would, it could absolutely come back. And this is where I'm kind of hedging because it's insurance, right? It could come back on the client where they do have a claim. And then at that point, the insurance company could deny it because of the tool not being back on.
Yeah, I understand that, but could it come back and if the MSP doesn't force them to, could it come back on the MSP because you were responsible for forcing them to do, 2FA?
I'm going to defer to Reid on this one.
So whenever you look at it from a contract standpoint, the contract is between the carrier and the insured, right? So liability is on them to maintain. So they're attesting. So when they attest to X, Y, or Z on any application, that's them attesting to it. Now they could try to point a finger, but at the end of the day, they're declaring.
If they declare they're using it, then okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I could see with that one in the application. If they lied on that, if they are using it and they don't, then they're not going to be paid out.
Just be careful if they're luring you into filling out the application with or for them, right?
No, we don't fill it out. We help them with some of the terminology and some IT portions of it, but the rest of it we don't.
Yeah, that's a good point, Alex. Just reminded me, there was a video a month or two ago from a vendor where it was two guys reviewing a cyber insurance application. They're like, you got to be careful, you're signing that. Don't sign it. It's like Reid said, the contract is between the insurance company and the insured, your client. You should not be signing any of that stuff. Help them fill it out, but then hand it to the customer and they need to verify it and complete it.
We just had a customer that got cyber insurance, and I said, well, what did you get? He goes, I don't know. My insurance agent filled it out. All I did was sign it. I go, how can they give you cyber insurance? They don't know nothing about your network.
My State Farm agent slapped it on my policy.
Yeah.
They're
gonna
probably has a ton of holes and exclusions in it, right? This is where you bring in the big boys and let them look at that policy and let them know what they really bought.
That you took the words right out of my mouth, Alex. There's a lot of there's good and bad everywhere. There's a lot of bad out there in cyber insurance as far as just folks thinking they have what is needed, and in fact, it's not really worth much. But God.
And I just presented to a city. They have a co-op, and I think they had $250,000 between them and 5 other cities, and they're only covered for $50,000. And they've got tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and the city council is happy with them just meeting tier 1. They don't care about having to meet all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we just because we just sat through this, Dave and I, through this American Waterways thing that the U.S. government's going to start pushing. You have to have these things in place. And one of the questions was to the group was, how do you convince them they need this when it's the city council making the decision and all they're looking at is dollars? What's it going to cost? So a lot of people don't care. I mean, if we run it out of some of our other customers, they don't care that they have to have it. They think that they can get by without it. We just presented to a customer here a few weeks ago. We asked him about, was he concerned about being breached? He said, not at all. And we showed him that we fished 2 of their people that actually clicked on the link, and he was mad. But came down to it, they didn't want to, go with our stack. They just, signed off, said, no, we'll take responsibility.
Yeah, there's a level of maturity here. So I've been through the trenches when it comes to, I had to do work through agents, first of all, for years, which there's an awareness problem there. They don't even understand what cyber is. And then I had to try to facilitate and equip them to have a conversation with their clients. So it was like even one step removed. So I'm like, I feel for you and what you just said, because like that is, you can be looking someone and showing them clean facts and they still are going to have their own opinion. I don't know where it's coming from, but if you're ever dealing with anyone in a board position, right, throw out the fact that there's a fiduciary responsibility now that they presented this information. So if it does happen, right, and then it's pointed back that this could have been mitigated, but they chose to not do it, that's a big issue, right?
Right, I brought that up because now they're aware of their shortcomings. And exactly. So if they do get breached, they're to be considered malice, and the insurance company isn't going to pay out.
Yep.
But they don't care. They just think that they're not going to get breached. Nothing's going to happen. And one of these customers I put you, they've already been breached. So, but they still don't want to put things in place.
Yeah, and Chuck, you had a good point too, is earlier whenever you were talking about kind of getting ahead of things, right? The agent filling it out, that's I think that was what made Reid seek out MSPs, was just dealing with agents too much. Get ahead of it, because what could happen in that case is, say there is a claim and at that point the claim gets denied, maybe because who knows what the agent filled it out. So tell your clients, like, I need to help you look at this and make sure that we have the right stuff in place security wise. That way it's not the agent, or even worse, the client filling it out on their own.
Yeah, I asked to see the application, and they actually sent me the policy, and so I was kind of going over it. A lot of it just didn't make sense to me. So I reached out to the agent, but he never got back to me.
Probably because he doesn't understand it either. Unfortunately, the one thing I do want to make sure is clear: filling out the application, perfectly fine. So like, as the risk advisor, as an MSP, as whatever capacity, I can do that, and I can help fill out those pieces of information. When it comes to who is signing off on that application, that's what we're talking about is critical, okay? That is not what you need to be signing off on, all right? That is not your responsibility, that's not your liability. So when it comes time to sign on the dotted line, it could be pre-filled from anybody, right? It's the business owners, then eyes, that have to be on that, look at it, verify, I'm saying this is accurate, and I'm gonna sign off on it. One quick thing too, I see in the chat that someone asked about small village municipalities having cyber liability insurance. Absolutely. Unfortunately, it's one of the hardest. There's two things that are happening. You've got a under-resourced group where budgets are low. You've got an awareness problem, so they probably aren't buying, but also they're extremely high risk because there are breaches happening there. And when they do happen, they're not low, they're really high. So just to answer the question, the answer is yes. It's just often it's a pretty hard sale for the smaller municipalities.
I was having a tough time to get them off of a mobile hotspot and on the internet.
So you get it, unfortunately.
But that's like we just sat through that whole AWIA thing, and they're talking about Washington. They're pushing these things for these municipalities to do in this standard, and they, this one particular city, they did an AWIA audit, but they only did it because they had to file with the state. They don't care about having to meet anything on there. They just wanted to do it because they had to file with the state. And so this thing, they're coming down, I guess the president's side of it, they're going to be mandated to meet this. And if they get breached, it's 6% of their operating budget they get fined. And so it's a huge amount, but they just don't want to do it. It just aggravates the hell out of you. Like, hey, this is what you have.
Are they not mandated now?
No, they're not mandated now. No, but it's going to be coming. There's loans, but there's water, which is wastewater and water, is the third highest targeted right now. It was 12. They were number 12 position last year. Now it's number 3 behind financial and what was the energy game. So even though they've escalated, and they're saying that you need to protect this, and they're putting things in place, unless something happens, they're not going to do it. And I guess this law supposedly has teeth because everybody knows HIPAA. So I asked them, is this law
going to be mandated here soon?
Yeah, those municipalities, the water and all that stuff too, and then schools are the other one that we're seeing a real hard time. Carriers just don't want to touch it right now.
It's a similar dynamic where you have low budget, low awareness, and from their perspective, it's not an easy path to get to the level of controls that carriers are looking for. So
low budget, low awareness, and high risk.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and it's unfortunate. Those are actually the two. We saw it with manufacturing as well. I don't know if anyone works with manufacturers, but it's getting a lot better. But manufacturing for a while was kind of in a similar bucket. But yeah, schools and municipalities, they're just really hard, really hard.
They feel that since they're, only, small municipality that only has like one bookkeeper and the police chief, that they don't need to have a firewall. They don't need to have cyber liability insurance. They don't need to have any of that.
Yeah. The only way I've been able to break through some barriers there is as I just talk about access, like, because they're thinking what's tangible, what's data, what do we have? And it's like, it's not what you know, Jim, in the office with one other person has. It's the access you have to everything else. And just think about that, just domino effect it, and start to go, you know, sector by sector that is being touched and has access through you. But even then, you can shake them by the shoulders and scream in their face, but they may not see what you see.
Yeah, if somebody can find a way to convince all those people, we got a huge check for you.
For sure.
So
Somebody had.
Yeah, we got
Sorry?
a couple other questions. You got those, Dustin?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Cobus had asked on there about. Let me read it out loud.
That was kind of
Okay,
this
that was the
conversation.
small villages. Yeah.
Yep.
So one piece I was going to say on that is whenever you're talking to everybody, it's like technically everybody needs cyber insurance. There's some of the really easy ones, right? It's like a doctor's office. Well, yeah, you need it because you have a bunch of valuable data. So let's go to the opposite end. Okay, maybe I'm a sandwich shop, right? Dude, I don't have, they can steal my salami counts. What does that matter? So the other part is like business interruption, right? Well, say your point of sale stuff gets ransomware and you can't take payments. Like what was the lost business on that? So I pulled up, this is the cool part to where it's like, okay, what all does it cover? Is the limits page. And so if you look in any insurance policy, you're gonna see this. And I'm gonna let Reid talk through this because this goes back to, remember I said earlier, getting into a specific policy. This is a generic one, but whenever you see this, this is where you, the MSP, stop talking and you say, let me get my insurance buddy on the line.
Yeah. So I think, and the goal here is like, let's get everyone dangerous enough so look, these are questions we need to be answering. We need to be talking about this. So I need to ask you, have you gone through some sort of process to understand, do you have good cyber coverage? And if the answer yes, because my agent told me so, not good enough because we've already established some agents, if not a lot, just don't know. Okay. So when and I say we, Fifthwall, are looking at policy, I'm going to oversimplify it, but let me just hit some buckets because this is a good way that I have found that actually can help somebody understand what their exposures actually are. And when I say that, I mean, what does this actually look like? So if I get breached, so what? Okay. Well, if we go through the coverages of what carriers have said, these are all the nuances that we have started to find that businesses get affected. They all of a sudden start thinking and realize, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about business interruption. I didn't think about the fact if I was down, I can't do business. And how much sales would I lose per day, per week, per month, potentially? So real quick, we're talking about liability. This is a good story to tell. It's not just you. It's start asking questions of what would it look like if you caused somebody else's breach? Okay, right now, everyone's very trigger happy with getting a lawyer assigned to say, this is not my client's fault, it's someone else's fault, okay? Malicious code came from this point, not my client, okay? It came through the email. They were social engineered through you. That's third party, and a good cyber insurance policy is gonna cover that. Dustin already hit everything that's in blue here, and I categorize that as crisis management, but it's basically the pretty consistent elements that are gonna come in and navigate that claim and help push that claim through a process. When we get to some of the more, I guess, soft costs, right? It's not direct costs. We're talking about business interruption. You guys already know about ransomware. But when we're talking about BI, business interruption, it's a really good topic. Dustin already hit on it. Think about it. Have you guys thought about if you are down for a day, what does that look like? Like, this is a quick exercise we could run. Just run some quick math. What would it look like if we were down for 3 days? What would you guys lose on sales? Reputational damage is often something that's overlooked, but it is covered. So if you're breached, great, you get through the breach. Maybe you took some battle bruises and you've got some scars, but then after the damage is done, what does that look like? Are you losing clients? Are you not viewed as secure? Does this affect your reputation? And you start to lose sales there. When we get to some of the new, I say newer, but for insurance, it's been new. We're seeing some of the, I call it utility fraud, but when we start seeing crypto jacking and we start seeing telecommunications theft, these are just utilizing its utility fraud. And the one thing I do want to highlight, because I think it's probably the most known, is because you see it in the headlines, folks are pretty familiar with social engineering. They're pretty familiar with electronic theft. These are things that I guess from a scenario, if you gave a scenario, they'd quickly understand it. Like, what if somebody accidentally got, tricked into sending a wire transfer, to the wrong person, things like that. When we are talking about full limit, I'm saying if you bought $1 million limit policy, that policy is saying you've got up to $1 million in a pool of reserves that you can spend on all these different things. But when we get to these other things that are sub-limited, these are kind of like crime coverages. They're typically sub-limited because they're very common, right? And so carriers are typically not providing full limits here, but they are providing what I would say is still like 250,000 of coverage, unless somebody's transferring funds more than 250,000 regularly. That should be adequate coverage. So, Dustin, that was as fast as I could go through it without being overly verbose. How'd I do?
You're doing great.
Okay.
And then something else too is I actually had back whenever I was just a Fifthwall customer, was one thing that Rita brought up. We had on a client that had a really low sublimit. So that's one of the areas that you'll see these kind of change. You'll get some of them that are out there here and there. So this is like this is the fine print, right? Whenever everybody's like, oh, there's stuff in there, they're going to get you. Like chances are if they're going to get you, it's probably going to be on this page. So this is a really good one to review. And the one specifically I was talking about was Reed had was looking at a client, one of my clients' policies on here, and I don't remember what it was, but it was ridiculously low on social engineering. He's like, dude, what do you think they're going to blame everything on? Like, this is one of 2 carriers that does this. We got 33 other carriers we can go take this to, or ask your agent to do it. So there's just weird little, there are gotchas out there, and a lot of the times it ends up being on this page.
So these are the rate limits that you want to have for your customers. How do you compare the rate that are the limits that an MSP themselves should carry versus these? Because I'm questioning that they probably are not the same.
Yeah, so whenever, it's a really good question. Let me just clarify one thing. We're talking about, like, when we look at this page, the recommended limit for a business today is $1 million in cyber liability. Okay, there's too many instances of even small events turning to 6 figures. Okay, so there's just too much data out there to say they should be looking at less. Okay, so this is the starting point. So we're going to have instances where a business should be looking at a 2 million limit, a 3 million limit, or a 5 million limit. This is just a quick education piece. Right now, the cyber market is in complete, it's like a trash can on fire because so many carriers lost a lot of money recently. And so they're not offering higher limits, right? If you're getting 10, you're doing it in a really creative way. So just disclaimer there. When we look at the MSP, we look at what you guys are doing, okay? That's a really tough question to answer without knowing some specifics about your business. If you're looking at your revenue, if you're looking at your operational costs, things like that, again, we're not gonna go below $1 million. Like, so if you have a policy that has a below $1 million limit, we need to do some shopping for you. Right now, we're in a really, really hard market for MSPs. Unfortunately, what I have to tell you is it's really, really hard to get coverage right now. It's really hard to get higher limits, but I'm assuming there's at least a couple people on this call that either got their limits completely increased like 5x for no reason, no claims, but they got an increase. Or I'm guessing some of you have experienced that you just got dropped by your carrier for no reason. It's happening all over the place. So the reason I say this is it's a good time to do the evaluation. And if you did get an increase or you're coming up on a renewal and you're looking at an increase, shop. Like, this is the consumer's time to make sure you're exploring every single option, because some carriers are looking at this black and white and they don't care if they see an acronym in there and they see anything that says managed service, their rates just go up 10x. They don't care. They're not looking at you as an individual insured. They're just looking at your industry. There are others out there that aren't doing that. So I went a little bit of a rabbit hole off your original question, Alex, but I just wanted to make sure that was said.
And start shopping early, because it's the underwriting is way more complex on the tech E&O side. So it's not one that you're going to be able to get done in a couple of weeks.
So what does early mean? A couple of months?
I would go 90 to 120 days out if you can. Now you're going to run into, so we're happy to help with this, by the way. So when I say this, we're not just saying go do it. We can provide a solution here. But at least it lets us or whomever that's working on it just start to better understand the appetites that are out there. So if you're working with your agent and this is new to them, they've got a lot of work ahead of them. For us, we already know the lay of the land. But yeah, I would say if you're working with, just a private agent, they are going to need 120 days probably.
Okay.
I have a question for Reid. I've been reading, and will insurance cover this, that like medical clinics that get breached, now they're having patients coming back and suing the clinic for being reckless with the custodial of their records. Will your cyber insurance cover those claims as well? Or is that something completely different?
Yep. So if anything forms into, if litigation forms, a good policy is going to provide defense. So I'm assuming if you're looking at the hospital network itself, who is being sued, yes, there's coverage for that to cover litigation, cover defense. It's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because that is starting to come up in different industries too. There's no clear regulation stating that, but they're making a good case, and case law has already been built around that right now. It happened like 2 years ago. It was actually local here. There was a healthcare provider locally.
If you can
That
show there were malice with your information, then they're liable.
Well, yeah, they basically, they were deemed to be, they're custodians of information, and they're not doing it properly. And of course, you're dealing with institutions that are very, very well financed and can fight legal battles. But the one I'm referring to was 2 or maybe even 3 years ago, but it was one of the first that I saw where they actually won the suit. And it formed a good case precedent that I think we're probably going to start to see more of that.
What happens then if your coverage is, say, $1 million and you lose that suit? Is it the owner of the business end that has to cover, or because you win, you're not going to collect because the insurance already capped out? Who's going to be on the hook for that?
Yeah, if they go beyond the limit, they're on the hook. So sometimes you'll see defense, what's called outside the limit, right? And so they'll actually, and this is a good thing. So some policies will actually grab some particular instances, like credit monitoring is one you'll see on some cyber policies. They'll actually say, look, credit monitoring is one of those wild things, or I'm sorry, notification credit monitoring. We don't know. It could be $10,000. It could be like $500,000. So we'll take the right approach and we'll say it'll be outside the limit. So you guys still have another full $1 million limit just for that. Some are doing that on defense as well. So I would say 9 out of 10 times though, they're probably going to be on their own if they already exhausted the limit.
Okay, that's good ammo for MSPs to have when we're having these conversations.
Yeah.
So we've got another question here though. In the case of a breach, would I be correct that the flow of action looks like this? Client reports to the MSP, and or the MSP gets an alert. So somehow the MSP finds out there's an incident. The MSP assists the client first with recovery, costs incurred, and then the client reaches out to the insurance to file the claim. I think that's a really oversimplification. Do we want to talk through what that really ought to look like?
I would just switch 2 and 3. Here's why. You don't know what's covered. So like, don't assume that you're going to get reimbursed unless there's a different model, a different approach. And I'm going to leave Dustin to speak to that as far as like what has been communicated with your client on what you would do in these types of instances and what maybe your fee is attributed to. But from my perspective as the insurance guy, I'm going to say tread with caution, make sure you're calling the insurance carrier first, because then you can know how you're able to move under the policy, right? So like, am I doing this on my own and I'm not getting what I'm doing, my time reimbursed by insurance, or am I? Like, that makes a difference, right? And so just understanding what the policy is actually going to cover, and if you are what they would call an approved vendor, that's an important element to have. So, and Dustin, we've gone back and forth on this. I'll let you speak to it as well.
So actually, I haven't spoken with Reid about this recently because I've been trying to get this going on my MSP side. So it is, they call it the Claims Panel, which is the approved vendors for that side of it. I have been working, so even with kind of the, called the inside track that I have with, Fifthwall, that I know who to get to, that sort of thing. I've been trying for about 2 months and I have not even been able to get a response, besides we are not considering additional IR panel applicants at this time. So to say on that is, yeah, awesome if you can get pre-approved by the insurance. I've personally seen very little success in even starting that conversation. But yeah, to Reed's point is it's all over the place. So I would say have it in your contracts in advance, have that discussion with the client, or at least have in your head, right? Here's what we're going to do. The way that we're doing it here is that at my MSP is if we do submit, there's an incident, we actually just went through this, is if the client's having to pay out of pocket, there's a reduced rate for it that we kind of do a discount on it. But we at least know there's a plan, right? Not just hopes and prayers whenever the claim happens, is the insurance company going to accept us or not?
And when the guys from like Blackpoint talked through this at Write a Boom, the conversation was pretty clear that in their experience, and these guys do response to this stuff all the time, insurance companies largely are really shaking their head when the MSP who was involved and was present for the breach is wanting to remediate the breach. And that's one of the big problems that they have is, and they want to make sure that evidence is preserved. They want to make sure that all the right steps are taken. They want the real pros in there to do it. And they really want somebody who's removed from the situation involved, because as an MSP, when you get breached, there's an emotional aspect to that, right? And they're really concerned that you're going to make a wrong decision or a wrong choice because you're tied up in this emotionally. And so they're probably going to ask you to step back and take guidance and take instruction just based on some of that.
Yeah,
Yep.
plus you have skin in the game too.
The guys from Black Hills InfoSec, I think it was, went into that a ton. I forget who it was that went into that. Right.
The bad stories that we've seen have been stuff like, oh, the MSP went and restored backups, took major action. And that's where it was like, okay, you just completely screwed up on it. Speaking anecdotally, I said we just had one that was approved for payment by insurance. All we did was we isolated, shout out for Huntress, is we used the host isolation. We isolated the entire network. We locked down firewalls inside and outside between every single zone. And then we stepped back and called the claims line. So again, that's just my one specific experience, but all the bad stories that we're seeing are from major actions and stuff. So it's kind of like, we can say absolutely don't do anything stupid until the claims folks are involved.
The problem is it doesn't seem stupid at the time, right? You're in the you're in the middle of it. Your customer's screaming at you. They got to be back up. And the MSP goes, all right.
Have a plan is really what that goes back to.
Yeah.
Have a plan ahead of time. What are you comfortable doing, not doing? What talk to the customer, have an idea.
Also, if you have the time, which I know none of us have, but it also could behoove you to call the insurance carrier ahead of time. So if you're talking to your clients, you're going through this process, you're saying, I want to put a plan in place, and you're looking at this, and you can have someone on staff that can call real quick and say, hey, I'm putting an IR plan together. I just need to make sure what's the framework here. So if we could run through a quick exercise, I just want to understand, I need to be able to react to my client quickly. That's what they're paying me to do in some regard. And I just don't want to be penalized for that. So what are your, you could say, what is your framework? What are your rules around this for third-party IT coming in and getting involved at the onset, right?
And Dustin, you may be able to talk to Greg's question about how far does the MSP go. In my experience, host isolation is about it. And that's where Huntress is so wonderful. Like literally don't let the machine talk to anything. Don't even shut it down because you don't want to lose anything that's in memory. Unless you're convinced that you're ahead of encryption and it's going to get encrypted if you don't shut it down. Leave it alone, isolate it, and walk away is the best advice I've heard.
Yeah, this is a total cop-out answer, but I do want to explain that too. It's like every situation is different. But the reason I'm saying that is,
but that's why you want the insurance on the phone, right? Let them make the wrong call, not you.
But even whenever they're making the calls, you're going to see it go different. Is going back to this one, right? So breach occurs. You have your carrier, so you're going to have a different person quarterbacking it every time, a different carrier, and then legal counsel. So okay, what attorney did I get on the phone? And then at that point, they pull in the IR team. It's like, okay, they got AtBay is one that I know specifically because I talked to them recently. It's like they have 6 companies publicly listed on their claims panel, IR companies. So like you could get a completely different one every time. One of them maybe, again, we had another thing we were involved in that IR was pretty incompetent, I'm going to say. Hopefully Reed's not going to smack me. I'm not naming names at all, but it was
I know who
just
you're
like,
talking about. I'm not going to smack you.
We were sitting there and I was just like, man, these guys, like, this is, whenever you talk about doing everything wrong, it's the, these guys would normally, if they were the MSP, the insurance would be shutting them down kind of thing. So that's where I say every situation is different. There's so many different parties, so many different carriers and stuff that it's going to vary drastically. There's not, and again, with the industry changing so fast and all that, there's not a hard and fast rule. We're seeing stuff change week to week. So like I said, cop out answer, but there is kind of a logic behind that, or not logic, but there's reasons behind that answer.
But I think this
so
goes
then to
back
be
to the
cl-
point earlier of it's never too early to call the insurance company. Don't worry about
Yeah.
calling them and putting them on notice.
Yep.
This isn't like your car insurance where you're worried that if you talk to a human, your rate's going to go up. You know, get them on notice, make sure that they know that something's happened. They'll decide whether or not they need to give you guidance at that point or whether or not you can continue to operate and move from there.
So then to be clear, my question is, if there's a breach, we just back off and have them contact the insurance company. That's my understanding. My other understanding is we as a third party can't report the breach to the proper authorities. It has to be the client. Is that correct?
No, you can notify. So it does not have to be the insured. So you can notify. Now, what's going to happen is they're going to want to turn right back around and verify with the client. But like you can notify and call and say, hey, my client is your client. Here's what I understand is going on.
Well, I'm talking about the authorities.
Oh, contacting the FBI?
Yeah, or the attorney general for the state. From my understanding, that we can't do that. It's got to be.
I'll say Dustin Bolander, the MSP business owner, doesn't want that liability. Just throwing my 2 cents in there.
I would, as Dustin said, there's like plenty of different answers to this, but to keep it clean, I would say that instance, leave it to the insurance.
Gotcha.
I want to grab Greg's question real quick because I have what I'm going to call a stupid mind-blowing fact for you guys. So Greg Webb asked, we have clients with MFA who have employees that get temporarily put into bypass mode. Should I never do that? Tech clicks the button to put them in bypass mode, but the employee requested it. So first of all, speaking from the security standpoint, please never do that. But one thing on insurance is that the attestation form, that underwriting, is at the time of attestation. So super hypothetically, not saying do this real world, but it's one of those things where it's like you could go turn off MFA for everybody tomorrow. And technically that would be within, you wouldn't have lied about anything. It was on at the time you did it. All that is starting to change. We are starting to see more continuous scans, and Fifthwall, we have some big stuff coming out in the next 60 to 90 days, kind of around that. But on the attestation piece, so one of the things that drives me crazy is the industry, in MSP industry, right? You hear, oh, insurance never pays out, it's a scam. One of the things that doesn't ever pay out is if you have like a general liability policy and it'll have like a cyber edition on it where it's like $100,000, $250,000. Those don't pay out. These standalone policies that we're talking about, the $1 million and up coverages, almost always pay out. I've been begging Reid to get us a specific statistic, and we'll have that in the next 60 to 90 days too that we can share. But I mean, it's pretty, not universal is not the right word, but.
And keep in mind, these are policies that they started being written around 2016, okay? And this was in a really soft market, meaning there were not a lot of claims, and the language is extraordinarily broad, meaning it's a really big net. There's really not a lot. Most forms, if you look at it, they're going to have 27 to 30 different items in the exclusion list. But if you look at that, it's like, no, these are excluding like very, very minute atypical situations. That said, the market is now no longer soft. It's hard. Carriers are getting hurt. They're losing blood. So they're going back. This is not a quick process, but they are doing it. And you're going to start to see new conditional language forming. So the big thing that's going around social media right now is around like acts of war and terrorism, because there's an exclusion in these policies.
I was going to
which previously it was like, oh, well, that's an atypical situation. We don't need to worry about that. And to date, the courts, you have a few one-offs, but most of them were not able to provide any consistency with how that exclusion would come into effect. That's now changing, right? And I'm not going to go too insurance nerdy, but there are certain types of markets that can make that decision quickly, and there's other types of markets that can't, right? But the moves are still being made. So it's just a cautionary tale, is I guess what I'm saying, is that we're seeing these changes start to come in. And Let me give you an example. We've seen a condition for funds transfer verification for years, right? It's, hey, if you are transferring funds more than $25,000, you are doing some sort of secondary verification to ensure it's the right party. That's in the contract. It's in the policy. I never saw that withheld up until like a year ago, not once, but it was always there. So we're starting to see carriers are now, I mean, it's getting much more cutthroat, hence the importance of the reviews, making sure a good policy, there are so many good policies out there, but there are a lot that are just trying to save their butts.
I think we're bumping up against time, right, Alex?
I think we are, and I was going to ask how much of your content we really got through, and if we need to have you guys back to, because I know we got off on a big question tangent and got 6 slides in.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to? I guess I'll ask you guys. Number one, would you be willing to come back if folks want to continue this conversation? And then to the folks who are here, is there enough value to have these guys back to continue some of this conversation? Because it seems like everybody's enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, I think there is.
Okay. So we will schedule that. I believe we can bump next week's conversation and just have you guys back next week if Dustin and Reid can make it work.
I will double check, but I think so.
Double checking now.
Okay.
Hold on. Yes.
Okay.
I say perfect.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be good to have these guys back and kind of finish this conversation, because I don't want anybody to feel like we got rushed through something that you cared about. So to that end, I do want to skip ahead. And Dustin, do you want to kind of tell everybody what you and I have been working on for the last, at least all morning?
I was also going to say too, if you guys have any specific questions and stuff, email them to Alex. It would be
So
best.
you know what? I send out an email with a wrap of the week and along with this recording. So I'll say just reply to that, because everybody will get that automatically.
Awesome.
So you can just
Okay.
reply.
Thanks, Marnie.
Yep.
Yeah, let us know what you want us to cover specifically, detailed
For
questions,
next
stuff
week.
like that.
Yep.
And like Alex said, so this is, I think, the first time that I get to do this, that we got something cool for you.
Okay.
If you log into Lifecycle, over at Fifthwall, we have something we call Lord of the Apps, and it is our kind of consolidation of all the different applications that we're seeing come across. So we now have a module that we've deployed in assessments for you guys, template, sorry, that has I think it ended up about 60 questions. So we did some of them. So just to be clear, this isn't the exact questions you get, but if you run through this with your client in preparation for renewal or applying for cyber, you'll be able to take all the answers on this and use it to fill out, the apps that you're going to get from the cyber carriers. So this is all the stuff that we're seeing.
Yeah, if you can check all the boxes green here, you should be in really good shape when you run up against it with your insurance provider. So Fifthwall's been kind enough to give us this template to utilize. I will tell you, when I went through it, it's way deeper than what I think most MSPs are digging in with their customers. So I think there's some really good value here. At the very least, go through this and make sure there's not some questions you want to add to your regular risk assessment. But if you've got a client who is 60, 90, 120 days out from an audit or from a renewal, this may be a good resource for you guys. It is named the 2022 Q2 Cyber Insurance Preparation powered by Fifthwall. So this is their content. They've been kind enough to share it with us. I had to mangle a little bit of it to fit it in here, but a little bit of a shoehorn and a big hammer, and we got it in here for you guys to be able to check it out. So
and Wilson's info is on there too. You can see there, Wilson Henry at fifthwallsolutions.com. He is the head of our MSP partner program. So if you do need quotes, you can just fill this out, export it, send it over to him, and he can help you and work with your client to get options for them.
So that is in the platform and live today, guys. So go check that out, and we'll have these guys back next week. If you play with this, you might have some questions, but otherwise, we'll have these guys back next week, and we can continue the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you.
I will be on the road next week, and I will try to make it, but if not, Marnie will herd the cats.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. I
Yeah.
appreciate the conversation. This is the first time ever we've invited to get us back the following week because there was too much to talk about. So awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.